I don't even know where to start, so I'll just go with the truth. Someone is sending me letters about my wife. Real, physical letters. Anonymous. Detailed. And so far, they've been right about everything. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they're doing this. But I do know that as of 5 days ago, my entire perception of my marriage flipped. And now I'm living in a house with someone I love and no longer recognize. My name's Jordan. I'm 37, a software engineer. My wife, Celine, 35, is a UX designer for a well-known tech startup. We've been married 12 years. No kids, by choice, mostly hers, and I respected that. We live just outside Seattle, nice quiet street, 2 dogs, couples game night every 3rd Friday. From the outside, picture perfect. From the inside, well, apparently, I've been living in a beautifully staged hallucination. It started with a letter. Monday morning, like any other. Grabbed the mail on autopilot. Ads, a utility bill, and a plain white envelope. No return address. The name and address were typed. Inside, a single printed page. No handwriting. Just a few lines of clean, emotionless text. On Tuesday at 6:42 p.m., your wife was in room 406 of the Vail House Hotel with a man in a gray coat. I know this because I was there. I'm not your enemy. But you deserve to know. No greeting. No signature. No demands. Just information. I laughed. Out loud. Genuinely thought it was some kind of prank or maybe marketing gone rogue. But you know that feeling you get when your stomach goes cold before your brain catches up? That happened. I remembered Tuesday. She'd told me she was stuck in back-to-back Zooms with investors from the East Coast. Said she was working late and needed privacy. Even showed me a screenshot of her calendar, full of little color-coded blocks. It all looked completely legit. I even brought her dinner to her office door, and she waved me off with 5 more minutes. But now I was holding this letter in my hand. And the way it was written, calm, direct, it didn't feel like a prank. It felt forensic, like evidence being submitted into court. I started to spiral, quietly. I waited until she went to bed that night, then checked her location history on Google Maps. She hadn't turned it off. We both had shared history for years, for convenience more than trust, but still. And there it was, Vail House Hotel. 6:31 p.m., arrival point 7:09 p.m., departure point 38 minutes. My hands started shaking. I checked the hotel online. Business suites, upscale, not sleazy. Room 406 was a corner unit, apparently used for private consultations. The kind of place you rent by the hour, not by the night. But I still didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started writing everything down in a notebook. I don't know why. Maybe to stay grounded. Maybe because I couldn't believe this was real unless I had proof I wasn't going crazy. Then, 3 days later, another letter. I know you started watching. That's good. Wednesday's next. She'll say she's going to a new salon. Check the address. And sure enough, that Wednesday, she told me she had a consultation at some boutique beauty studio her coworker recommended. She even joked that it was low-key and too new to be on Yelp. I Googled the address she gave me. It didn't exist. The number belonged to an abandoned building in Bellevue that used to be a dog bakery. Yes, a literal bakery for dogs. Welcome to the PNW. I didn't know what to think anymore. I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the mailbox every morning like a man waiting for his verdict. And all I could think was, how long had this been going on? And why the hell did it take a stranger to show me? I didn't ask her about it. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I started watching. That's when the silence between us began to feel like glass. Clear, polished, and just one breath away from breaking. The next morning, Celine made waffles. Not frozen ones. Not toaster waffles. Real ones, with batter from scratch and blueberries folded in. She even dusted them with powdered sugar like it was a weekend brunch date. This is not something she normally does. I stared at the plate in front of me like it was a trap. She smiled, kissed my temple, poured me coffee, and asked about my dreams. I lied. I told her I couldn't remember. But I remembered everything. The letter. The location history. The dog bakery that used to be a salon. The silence that grew between us like fog. I remembered the sound of her voice when she told me she was heading out. Upbeat, effortless. That specific kind of ease you can only have when you've done something wrong and already decided to pretend it didn't happen. She sat across from me and ate her waffle like it was the best thing she'd tasted in weeks. I forced mine down in mechanical bites, chewing on suspicion instead of syrup. After breakfast, she said, "Want to go for a walk later?" I nodded. She left for work. Said she had a UX sprint and an investor demo. Kissed me again before she walked out the door. I waited 2 minutes, then opened my laptop and pulled up our Google Maps history again. She'd turned off location sharing. That afternoon, I started combing through other digital traces. iMessage, shared photo albums, the Dropbox we used for random stuff like vacation plans and tax forms. Nothing suspicious. Which, of course, was suspicious. Elise was always careless with clutter. Her digital life was usually messy. A million open tabs, random screenshots, voice memos from months ago. But now everything looked curated. Pruned. I even checked the vacuum bin. Clean. She was covering tracks. And doing it well. That night, I casually asked, "Hey, how was that salon?" She looked up from her book. "Oh, cute place. Tiny. The kind where they offer you tea and talk to you like they're your therapist." She blinked once. Tilted her head. "Why?" I shrugged. "Just curious." She smiled and went back to reading. The next morning, I checked the building again online. The fake salon now had a temporary website, clearly rushed. No logo. One stock image. A phone number that redirected to a voicemail in a robotic male voice. They were trying to patch the lie. This wasn't just her. Someone was helping her. I started to feel like a man living in a room that someone else was rearranging while he slept. Celine became more affectionate. She texted me from work, "Thinking about you." She brought home my favorite coffee without asking. Left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. "Let's do something spontaneous this weekend." None of it felt real. It felt reactive, like she sensed something was slipping. Then came the dream. We were at our wedding. She was smiling, but her eyes were locked on someone in the crowd. I turned to look, but the faces were blurred, all but one. A man in a gray coat. When I woke up, I couldn't breathe. Celine was already in the shower. I sat at the edge of the bed and stared at my feet, trying to decide if I was losing my mind or finally seeing clearly. That afternoon, a neighbor waved to me and said, "Saw Celine yesterday. New haircut?" I froze. She said she'd just come from one of those boutique places near the lake. I smiled, nodded, thanked her. The address she gave me was across town. The calmness I'd seen in Celine? It wasn't real. It was armor. And I was finally seeing the cracks. I bought the camera on a Wednesday. Cash. No loyalty card, no digital receipt. Just a small motion-activated model with night vision. Something simple, something discreet. I didn't know exactly what I expected to find. Maybe a late-night phone call, a secret meeting, some kind of break in the performance she was giving me. What I found was silence. And something worse. I installed the camera in my home office. Technically, it was our shared workspace, but she hadn't used it in months. Said she liked the kitchen counter better. I angled the lens to capture the hallway and part of the living room. The couch. The entry. Just enough. That night, she said she was tired. Said she might read in bed and fall asleep early. I told her I needed to stay up and wrap a few things. She kissed me, smiled, and left. At 2:12 a.m., she reappeared. The footage showed her walking slowly through the dark house in silence. She stood in the middle of the hallway, barefoot, wearing one of my t-shirts. And she just stared. Not at the wall. Not at the door. Not at anything. Straight ahead. Blankly. As if she was listening to something I couldn't hear. For 10 full minutes. Then she walked back to bed. The next night, same thing. Except this time, she stood in the living room and picked up a photo frame from the shelf. One of our wedding pictures. She stared at it for almost 3 minutes. Her lips moved slightly. I couldn't tell what she said. Then she put it back, turned out the light, and left. No calls. No texts. No secret rendezvous. Just that stare. That eerie calm. I started to wonder if she was unraveling. Or if she knew I was watching, and this was part of the act. 3 days later, another letter arrived. Same white envelope. Same neat font. No return address. Inside. Room 406 wasn't the first. Bellevue wasn't the last. Keep going. And below that, GPS coordinates. A date. A time. The location was a small co-working space across the lake. I checked the business, creative marketing hub. Open floor plan, lots of freelancers, startup energy. Not her office. Not even close. But she'd been there. My Google timeline showed a brief window on a random Friday 2 months ago. She told me she was at a client meeting. I didn't sleep that night. She curled beside me like nothing had changed. Her breathing slow and soft. My eyes stayed open. I felt like I was sleeping next to someone who'd already left me, but hadn't told me yet. The next day, I drove to the co-working space. Told the front desk I was there to pick up something for my wife. They asked her name. I gave it. The receptionist's face went still. She was just here last week. What does she do here? I asked. A pause. She meets with someone. Guy with glasses. Gray coat. Don't know if he works here. He usually waits outside. My blood went cold. Room 406. Gray coat. That night, I didn't say anything. I cooked dinner. She made a joke about overcooked chicken. We watched a movie. She put her head on my shoulder. And I felt like I was living in a replica of my life, a perfectly staged version, while the real thing rotted just beneath the floorboards. I checked the hallway footage again. That night, she didn't get up. I almost wished she had. She started watching me. Not the way you look at someone when you're listening, the way you do when you're studying. At first, it was subtle. Pauses after questions. Slight tilts of her head, as if memorizing how I answered. Then came the check-ins, moments that felt more like surveys than conversations. You okay lately? Everything feel normal? Have you been sleeping all right? I played dumb. Smiled. Said I was just tired. She nodded too quickly every time. Her timing was impeccable, always asking when I least expected it. While brushing her teeth. Mid-commercial. Reaching into the fridge. Like she was testing for consistency. For cracks. She wasn't asking because she cared. She was asking to confirm something. Because she knew I knew. That morning, she brought me coffee in bed. She never does that. She sat beside me, crisscrossed her legs under the sheets like we were on a teenage sleepover, and said, I've been thinking, we should take a trip. Just us. No phones. No work. Just disappear for a bit. Reconnect. Her voice was soft. Gentle. Too careful. I stared at her and asked, reconnect from what? Her smile held, but her eyes broke. From the routine, she said. Life. Stress. I nodded slowly, like she just said something profound. I said I'd think about it. And she kissed my forehead like she'd just defused a bomb. I started keeping a second notebook. Not about her movements, about her words. Exact phrasing. Pacing. Tone. She was slipping into something between actress and interrogator. One night, she made a comment about an inside joke we hadn't used in years. One that only came up during a huge fight we once had. A specific phrase I hadn't heard since that day. She used it casually, like seasoning. Like she was trying to see if I'd flinch. The next night, we had wine. She lit candles. Played an old playlist we used to listen to in our first apartment. Everything curated to feel like memory. Like warmth. Like love. I sipped slowly. Watch her. And then she asked, do you believe people can change? I waited. Then I asked, are you trying to change, or trying to make me think you have? She stared at me for a long time. Then she smiled. I don't know what that means, she said. And I knew that she did. The next morning, a neighbor told me they'd seen her at the park, not our local one, the one by the marina, sitting alone in her car for nearly an hour. She never mentioned it. Later that day, I checked the hallway footage again. She'd stood in the dark again the night before. 10 minutes. Silent. Still. But this time, when she turned to leave, she whispered something. I enhanced the audio as best I could. For words. I think he knows. I don't know who she was talking to. Herself. Him. Me. But I do know this. Her calmness was gone, and in its place was calculation. She wasn't just lying anymore. She was preparing. The thing about trust is, once it cracks, it doesn't make a sound. It just quietly starts leaking. And if you're smart, you don't patch the leak. You follow it. You trace it to the source. You let it show you where the damage really is. That's what I decided to do. On Thursday night, I told Celine I had a work trip in Portland. A short overnight conference. Early train down, late train back. Totally routine. She didn't blink. Send me pictures, she said, smiling. Don't forget to bring that gray sweater you hate but always get compliments on. She kissed me goodbye the next morning like a woman seeing her husband off to a dentist appointment. I didn't go to Portland. I rented a car under a different name, parked it 2 blocks from our house, and sat there all day with tinted windows and a camera. She left around noon. Casual outfit. No makeup. Hair tied back. The kind of look she usually reserves for lazy Sundays. She drove across town and parked in front of an apartment building I didn't recognize. She didn't knock. She had a key. I waited. 43 minutes later, she came out. Alone. But her hair was down. And she was wearing lipstick. She got back into the car like nothing had changed. But everything had. Later that evening, she texted me a picture of her dinner. Thai food, neatly plated. Said she was binge-watching some old series we used to love. I responded with a thumbs up emoji and a photo of some generic hotel lobby I'd Googled. She replied, "Looks depressing. Miss you." I sat in my car and read that sentence over and over until I felt physically sick. The next day, I went to the building she visited. Claimed I was looking for someone who might have lived there. Wrong floor, wrong name. Played the awkward brother routine. The leasing manager was friendly. "Oh, that unit," she said. "No one lives there full time. Some guy comes in a couple days a week. Works remotely or something. Quiet." She checked the record. Last name, C. Woods. I asked if he had a girlfriend. She laughed. "Wouldn't be surprised. There's this woman who shows up sometimes. Same car. Always looks like she doesn't want to be seen." When I got home, I found Celine on the couch with a blanket around her and a bottle of wine half gone. "Miss me?" she asked, looking up like a sleepy cat. "Of course," I said. She reached for my hand and pressed it to her cheek. "I had a weird dream while you were gone," she whispered. "I dreamed you were watching me. Like, from behind glass." I swallowed the acid rising in my throat. "What do you think it means?" I asked. She smiled with her eyes closed. "That I miss you," she said. "Even when you're here." That night, while she slept, I opened her laptop. She rarely used it. Hadn't touched it in weeks, as far as I could tell. It booted slow. Desktop cluttered with old folders. One folder caught my eye. Tucked deep inside, Utilities, Projects, Archive. Its name, Circles. Inside, notes, screenshots, emails, photos, dozens of faces, men, conversations, dates, little labels like detached, idealist, rebuilder, and next to mine, anchor, most consistent, most stable. Watching now, I stared at that line for a long, long time. Celine stirred in bed. I closed the laptop. As I sat beside her in the dark, listening to her breathe, one truth settled in. She hadn't just been cheating. She'd been running experiments. And I had just walked into the middle of one. After I read the word, anchor, I didn't sleep. Not from rage. Not from heartbreak. From clarity. For the first time, I understood that I wasn't just betrayed, I'd been categorized. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't lost. She was clinical. And now I had to be too. The next morning, she made pancakes. "Felt like a syrup kind of day," she said, like nothing had changed. She asked how I slept. "Better than expected," I said. She smiled. "See? Distance is good sometimes." I studied her. The way she buttered each pancake edge to edge. The way she watched me take my first bite before starting her own. She was gauging me, looking for a signal that the control she thought she had was still intact. So I gave her nothing. I began mirroring her. When she asked about my day, I told her what she wanted to hear. When she hugged me, I held her longer than usual. When she got home late, I never asked why. She relaxed, bit by bit. Like the grip she had on the performance didn't need to be so tight. But I watched. I took notes. I reread the files in the Circles folder. There were more than I'd realized. A dozen men. Some entries were brief, a date, a phase, a one-liner diagnosis. Others ran pages. Mine was somewhere in the middle. She'd labeled me as the stable baseline, the one to return to, the one that gave her permission to vanish from others. I wasn't the exception. I was the constant. One night, we were on the couch. A movie played in the background. She curled next to me and whispered, "Do you ever feel like you're watching your life instead of living it?" I turned my head slowly. "All the time." She stared at me for a beat too long, then said, "Sometimes I feel like I've been too lucky. Like I don't deserve this much safety." She used that word like a test. I nodded. "Then maybe you should be more careful with it." She laughed. Quiet. Nervous. Then changed the subject. 2 days later, another entry appeared in the Circles folder. Same file. Same format. Updated timestamp. Anchor showing increased distance. Monitoring needed. Potential for inversion. If he turns, risk of collapse. She knew. Or at least suspected. She had control. Or thought she did. But here's the thing about people who think they have everything under control. They never see the turn coming. Especially not from the one they've trained themselves to believe will never leave. That night, she reached for my hand as we walked the docks. We passed our neighbors. We waved. Smiled. From the outside, we looked like a couple living in harmony. On the inside, we were two spies sharing a cover story. She said, "You've been really quiet lately." I said, "So have you." She smiled and tightened her grip just slightly. There's a moment when you stop asking why and start asking how far. I passed that moment somewhere between her third fake smile and the spreadsheet labeled risk, high/reward, uncertain. It was buried in the circles folder. A log of what she called emotional calibrations. Some were about others. Some were about me. That was the night I stopped being confused. I wasn't a victim of one betrayal. I was part of a pattern. A sequence. A system she ran, not recklessly, but methodically. And yet, despite it all, she still kissed me goodnight. Still curled into me when she slept. Still breathed like someone safe. It made me sick. It also made me curious. The first name I dug into was Ethan, labeled the romantic idealist. They'd gone out 3 years ago while we were still very much married. I found emails in an archived Gmail folder, messages full of poetry, existential ramblings, and love confessions from a man who clearly thought she was the air he breathed. She played the role of muse perfectly, mirrored his sentimentality, told him he was a rare kind of light in a world of noise. He disappeared after 6 weeks. I kept reading. Then came Jeremy, the fixer, a divorced father of 2. Long paragraphs about his pain, his guilt, how she made him feel redeemable. She responded with carefully spaced vulnerability. I'm not used to being seen this clearly. He lasted almost a year. I found a photo of the 2 of them at a pumpkin patch, of all things. She'd told me she was visiting her aunt that weekend. The date matched. The list went on. Nathan, Paul, Chris, all with tags like seeks validation, searching for purpose, likely to collapse. And all with timestamps that intersected our life like invisible train tracks. Each man got a version of her. Each version had its own rhythm, tone, vocabulary. She adjusted like a chameleon with a clipboard. I was listed last. Jordan, anchor/monitor role. Default stability. Test ceiling pending. I had no idea what test ceiling meant, but it didn't sound like something people in love ever say about each other. That week, she started getting careless. She left a message open on her phone while in the shower. I didn't snoop. I didn't have to. It lit up twice. The name said Marie, yoga, but the preview said, can we talk after Friday? He's starting to shift. Marie wasn't her yoga friend. I checked our shared calendar. Friday, meeting with Claire, catch-up lunch. I'd met Claire once. Briefly. Blonde. Cheerful. Forgettable. Which, now I realized, was probably the point. I started tailing her again. Not with cameras. With my own eyes. On Friday, she left in a sundress and sunglasses. She looked happy. Free. She drove to a house I didn't recognize in Capitol Hill and parked in the alley. I watched from the end of the block. She didn't go in right away. She stood by the car, checked her reflection in the window, smiled, then walked inside like she owned the air. I waited 2 hours. She came out laughing, hair messy, holding her phone, not even pretending anymore. I followed at a distance as she drove away. She stopped for coffee, picked up groceries, smiled at the cashier, came home, and told me traffic was awful. Then she said, I missed you today. And I said, I missed you too. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because I did. Or because I wanted her to think I did. Or because I still wasn't ready for the truth to be the only thing left between us. That night, she touched me more than usual, laughed easier, as if cheating on me added something to her joy rather than subtracted. She was glowing, and I was dying. The next morning, I asked her casually, you think people can be 2 things at once? She looked up from her tea. Like what? Like kind and cruel, honest and deceptive. She smiled. I think that's the definition of being human. I nodded. And what if someone was pretending to be both? She didn't answer. She just stared at me, not confused, not offended, measured, then said, are you writing something again? I told her no. She said, you sound like a writer again. And then she kissed me on the forehead like I was a child who asked too many questions. Sunday morning, I woke up and found her laptop open. Not unlocked, just open, screen glowing faintly. She was asleep on the couch. I walked over slowly, quietly. A message window was still active. It wasn't a name I recognized. He's not confronting. That's a good sign. Means he still needs you. Another message blinked in real time. Update soon. He's the longest one yet. I didn't take a screenshot. I didn't forward it. I just closed the lid and stood there in the quiet. Longest one yet. I wasn't just the stable one. I was the endurance project. The test of what could be sustained. She wasn't cheating on me. She was building something around me. With me as the baseline. The more I didn't break, the more she could push. That night, I sat in the backyard alone. Looked up at the stars. Remembered the first time she told me she loved me. Soft voice, midnight call, trembling honesty. Or what I thought was honesty. Now I replayed that memory like a recording from someone else's life. Because maybe it had never been real. Maybe it was part of the design. Maybe everything was. She chose her moment carefully. Sunday evening. Low light. Quiet house. Rain tapping at the windows like stage direction. We were sitting on the couch, curled into the familiar shape we always formed. My arm around her, her legs tucked beneath herself, her head just below my jaw. It was a pose designed for trust. Nostalgia. Safety. That's when she said it. Can I tell you something? My heart didn't jump. It stilled. Like it knew. I said, of course. She sat up slowly, turned toward me, and folded her hands in her lap. Eyes wide. Not teary. Just open. Like she was switching masks and wanted me to watch. I've lied to you, she said. I said nothing. She exhaled. Looked down. Then back at me. It wasn't just once. And it wasn't about something small. Still, I said nothing. I think part of me needed to feel powerful. Not over you. Just over something. Over myself. My value. She paused, as if waiting for me to interrupt. I didn't. So I created versions of myself for other people. I didn't even realize I was doing it at first. I just adapted. And once I saw how easy it was to be loved for different reasons, I kept going. She said it calmly. Measured. Not defensive. It wasn't a confession. It was a presentation. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. But I also didn't know how to stop. I thought maybe I'd grow out of it. That you were the real me. The home base. I finally asked, am I? Her lips tightened. She nodded, but slowly. Hesitantly. I don't know anymore, she whispered. She reached for my hand. I'm telling you this because I don't want to lie anymore. Not to you. Not to myself. I looked at her hand in mine and thought about all the versions of her other men had held. Then I said, you're not telling me this for me. You're telling me this because you think I already know. She flinched. I'm telling you because it's true. But you never would have said it if I didn't start pulling away. She didn't answer, which meant I was right. Later that night, she asked if I hated her. I said no. Then she asked the real question. Do you still love me? And I answered with silence. Not because I didn't know, but because she didn't deserve to hear the answer from me. Not yet. She started sleeping on the couch. Said it was for space. Said she wanted to give me room. But really, I think she wanted to see what absence would do. Would I come after her? Would I miss her? Would I start to feel the need again? I didn't. What I felt was something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. 3 days passed. We barely spoke. Then she tried again. I can change, she said one morning in the kitchen. If you help me. I poured my coffee. Stirred slowly. You don't need help, I said. You need an audience. She didn't argue. That afternoon, I checked the circles folder again. Another update. New entry. Subject entered listening phase. Defenses are lowered. Test sequence may have initiated trauma collapse. Observed next 72 hours. I stared at the word trauma for a long time. She was documenting my silence like it was a script. A known beat. A reaction she'd expected. None of this was spontaneous. Even her confession had a name. The confession play. And I was still inside it. I didn't know what total collapse would look like. Turns out, it's quiet. It doesn't come with slammed doors or screaming matches. It comes with someone brushing their teeth while the world you built with them disintegrates. It comes with a breakfast table and 2 people pretending they're not ghosts. It started the day after her confession. We stopped playing house. She still lived in the same walls, slept in the same air. But everything else had shifted. I'd gone from being her anchor to being her mirror, the one thing she couldn't manipulate without seeing her own reflection. And she hated it. That week, I stopped checking the circles folder. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I already knew what I'd find. More notes. More evaluations. More phrases like subject distancing and emotional flattening. Maybe even a new plan. I didn't need to read it. I was living it. She cried once. In the kitchen. Out of nowhere. I was washing a dish. She came up behind me, touched my back, and broke. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. I dried my hands, turned around, looked at her, and I said the one thing I never thought I'd say. I think that's the only honest thing you've said in months. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. I made plans. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just escape. I found a short-term rental 2 towns over. A place with hardwood floors and nothing on the walls. I started moving boxes one at a time, tools, books, old sweaters. Nothing she'd notice right away. I timed it carefully. When she was out. When she was sleeping. When she was on the phone with Claire. Every trip out of the house felt like a breath after drowning. Every return felt like submerging again. Then came the final letter. Not in the mail. Hand-delivered. Slipped under my car's windshield while I was at the grocery store. Inside, a single USB drive. And a note. You need to see what she's saving before she erases it. I didn't open it right away. It sat on my desk for 2 days. Then, late one night, I plugged it in. Inside, screen recordings. Dozens of them. Footage of her editing the circles folder. Updating entries. Writing post-interaction notes after conversations we did only hours earlier. And then, one labeled Private Final. It was a video of her talking to the camera. If you're watching this, she said, then I guess you know. Her voice was flat, not apologetic. I don't know why I do what I do. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe I'm just more honest about the darkness than most people. But you were the one I never thought I'd hurt this way. She looked down, inhaled, blinked. You were supposed to save me from this. From me. And when you couldn't. I think that's when I broke something in both of us. She looked back up. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to stay. But I needed you to see that none of this was about hating you. It was about not knowing how to love anyone without breaking them first. Then she stopped recording. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just closed the file, packed the last box, and left. No note. No goodbye. No closure. Just space. And silence. I thought leaving would feel dramatic, cathartic, cinematic. It didn't. It felt like locking a door you never planned to unlock again. Not out of anger, out of necessity. The apartment I rented 2 towns over was a skeleton of a home. Nothing on the walls. No sound except my breathing. And for the first few nights, that was enough. I ate quietly, slept fitfully, woke up early, and didn't check my phone. I didn't tell anyone where I'd gone. She didn't call. She didn't come looking. I think, on some level, we both understood that whatever was between us had already ended. All I did was make it physical. I started walking in the mornings. Long walks through unfamiliar neighborhoods, past playgrounds and shuttered shops. I watched people, parents hustling kids into minivans, joggers with dogs, old men arguing over chess. I wasn't part of it. I was in between. Not broken. Not healed. Just uninhabited. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call my friends to vent or drink myself into forgetting. I just existed. Like an empty room after a party. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I could hear myself think. Sometimes I'd think about our early days. Not the marriage, the beginning. Her laugh. The way she used to fidget with her bracelets when she was nervous. The way she'd light up when talking about design. How she said interface was just emotional architecture. Was any of it real? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. 3 weeks passed before I got a message from her. Just 5 words. Are you ever coming back? I didn't answer. I wasn't being cruel. I just didn't have an answer. I didn't know what back meant anymore. Back to her. Back to that house. Back to being the version of me she needed. I turned off my phone. I made a list one night. Things I remembered clearly. About her. About us. The first time she told me she loved me. The time we danced in the kitchen, barefoot, wine drunk. The way she kissed me that morning I left for a week-long trip, like she couldn't bear the distance. The night she didn't come home, said her phone died. The time I found her looking at herself in the mirror, not fixing anything, just staring. The day I realized I was more invested in her potential than her presence. By the time I hit number 20, I stopped. The good and the bad had started to blur. And maybe that's what collapse really is. Not a sudden fall, but a slow merging of joy and harm until you can't tell them apart. A week later, I went back to the house. Not to see her. To get the last of my things. She wasn't home. Everything looked untouched. Our wedding photo still on the bookshelf. My jacket still hanging by the door. A note on the table. You don't have to say anything. Just leave your key. I left the key. And a letter. I don't remember exactly what I wrote. Only that I didn't try to explain. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask questions. I just said, there was a version of us that I loved. And a version of you I believed in. But belief is not the same as knowing. And love is not the same as staying. Then I walked out. For the last time. 6 months have passed. I live in a new apartment now. Still quiet. Still minimal. But the silence doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels earned. I see friends. I go to therapy. I talk more slowly. I listen more carefully. I've started writing again, not to document, but to remember how to speak to myself without someone else's voice in the background. Sometimes I wonder where she is, who she's becoming. whether she's still performing. I don't hate her. I don't forgive her either. But I understand her more than I ever wanted to. And in a strange way, that understanding is its own kind of peace. This story doesn't end with a new love or a dramatic epiphany. It ends with me, in a quiet room, writing this. Not because I want closure, but because I want proof that I made it through. Not intact, but awake.